Barnaby Jones will return next Thursday night at 10, 9 Central and Mountain on most of these stations.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
This Superman portrait is really a send-up of the original Fleischer cartoon intro, where you saw a quick explanation of the destruction of Krypton, the rocket ship coming to Earth, and the pose of Superman with fists on hips, where he's kind of looking down a little bit. This is an exaggeration of that, where I'm getting my traditional kind of Alex Ross low angle looking up the body kind of shot, which again I'll credit to Neil Adams as an influence. This is really just connecting with the most fundamental kind of influence in my life from that cartoon shaping the way that I illustrate Superman. It also connects in ways I'd never even thought about when I was doing the piece with one of the most famous images that Steve Rude did in World's Finest of Superman, where he kind of recreated that Fleischer moment with his painted figure of Superman, and then I would spend the rest of my career pretty much doing what he did before me.
Welcome back, everybody. It's time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. You'll forgive me, as I always say when I'm doing these shows in the daylight, I'm killing vampires in the background with the bright lights. John Suntress here. Always happy to welcome Dan Didio back. Dan, I am so glad, because I know it was tough when you were publisher of DC for us to get together and do a talk. You do it occasionally, and I always appreciated that. But now it's so wonderful because you're in charge of Frank Miller Presents, you're writing books, and I get more time to talk to you, which I adore. So I'm always glad you're back. Thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate it, John. You know, I always love talking comics, and I'm always looking for somebody's ear to chew when it comes to comic books. So it's good. It's good that we get a chance to do this.
Were you at MegaCon a couple weeks ago?
No. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it. It was my my granddaughter's birthday up in New Jersey, so we had to go there. I got a lot of grandkids right now, keeping me busy.
That's awesome, man. Here, Stephen is saying hello to us from Tampa. Appreciate it, man.
How are you, man?
And yeah, we'll get to some other comments in a second. But Dan, way to go! Your first young adult book.
Yeah,
Hide or
Seek.
Yeah, and give people the 10-cent pitch on Hide or Seek.
Yeah, the 10-cent pitch is it's about a young boy who, unknown to him, his father's a superhero. The father gets murdered on national TV. He doesn't realize what's happening until his mother calls for him. They have to get out of the house. They have to get away right away. And basically, they get swept away into witness protection because of the fear of what was going to happen to them now that their father was gone and his identity was revealed. So it's about a young boy. He gets thrown into a town. He's not sure what's happening in the town, what's going on. It's not exactly what it seems. And the people there aren't exactly what they seem either, especially since most of them are old villains of his father's rogues gallery, so to speak. So there's a lot of intrigue about the town and who to trust and who not to trust. And I had a blast doing it, I must say. It was a lot of fun.
You know, Dan, a couple weeks ago, I was at C2E2, and I did a young adult book panel with friends like my buddy Steens from New York, and Jeff Smith was on the panel, and a few others. And the one thing that was funny was, and I asked them, can you define young adult books? And they couldn't. And I was wondering if going into this, what guidelines you used, or did the publisher say this is what a young adult book should be, or anything like that?
No, actually, my guidelines were Saturday morning television. I used to work as a programmer for Saturday morning cartoons. Used to work on a lot. There was a certain sensibility that came along with that that's been pretty much ingrained into me. I worked with standards departments and a lot of different, educators working up that theme. So I had a sensibility of what sort of age bracket and the type of story I could tell. But since it was in print, I was able to push it a little bit harder than you would see on a cartoon. But it really is the same sensibilities you would have seen on Saturday morning, which is probably my wheelhouse and where I'm most comfortable writing.
No, and Reboot, right? Wasn't that
exactly?
Yeah, that was a great show, man. Good early kind of the same kind of animation we see in Attack of the Clones now, and or rather the Clone Wars, and God, even Star Trek Prodigy, I think
Yeah.
used to. I mean, it's a little more advanced, but I mean, yeah, you guys were kind of groundbreaking when you were doing that kind of animation.
First computer animated TV series. The only thing it was compared against at that time was Ants and Toy Story. That was the only other stuff that was going on there. And we pretty much were basically inventing the format as we went, literally trying to figure out the best ways to work. And it was a task, but incredibly talented people at Mainframe Entertainment, the guys who created the show, and had a chance to work with some really wonderful people during those days. It was a good time.
That's awesome, man. Here's the cover to Hide or Seek, the Superpower Protection Program.
Yeah.
Of what we're dealing with. So yeah, tell us more.
Oh yeah, well actually the art there, I like to always point out the art. The art is done by Kenneth Roper on the cover. I mean, Kenneth and I actually worked on a pitch for this for a live action TV, believe it or not. And we brought it over to Netflix. And unfortunately, at the time that we had pushed it at Netflix, they were getting out of the superhero business. So decided to really just take the idea and really push it out as a novel, because I had a story I wanted to tell. And I was looking forward to doing it. Plus, also, you got to remember, this is in the middle of the pandemic. Wasn't much else to do during that time. So I was able to find a couple of writers to help me lay out the story, get the sensibilities in order, and then really be able to go back in and really work it. And I have to say this now because it's kind of fun to say. I had an amazing editor. I really wasn't familiar with the pacing and the style of a novel, but the editor that I had from the company that I worked with, the publisher I worked with on this, was spectacular and really helping me find a voice and a tone and a direction, and making sure it was consistent throughout the book. And that's when those characters really come to life, because they really write themselves, but I had somebody help me really bring it to form, because this was new to me. Even I've done a lot of writing, but not this type.
Simon & Schuster is the publisher, and your co-writers are Anthony Marinville
and Chris Silvestri. And these are guys that I have a wonderful relationship with also. They're working with Frank on the Pandora book right now as well. And their background is TV as well, too. So we could speak a common language, which is really great.
You know, I love that you brought that kind of writer's room sensibility to DC. And now it seems like you're obviously doing it not only with your own book, but with Frank Miller Presents as well, the company that are you EIC, Dan? Forgive me, or are you?
Actually, Frank's editor-in-chief. I'm publisher. We're very clear about that.
All right, very good. All right.
Yeah, and actually, what's great about it, Frank takes that editor-in-chief thing very seriously, reviews the material, comments on it, rewrites, just like any editor would sort of do sometimes. It'd be interesting if we try to edit him that way, but it's really a lot of fun, and he's been fabulous to work with on all these projects.
Oh, and Nerdette says that Frank's Pandora is great. Very cool. Good to hear. And Paul wants to know, with Frank Miller Presents, will we get trade collections?
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, the very first trade for Pandora, covering issues 1 through 6, will be coming out this August. We're just soliciting it right now. So we're getting ready to start these books coming out. Pandora will be in August. The Ancient Enemies trade will probably either be November or December. And Ronin, I was hoping to have it this year, but it's moving a little slow. So it's probably going to be first quarter of next year. Okay.
Frank, Dan, how is the no digital going? Because honestly, I understand, and you want to make the obviously the retail experience important and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I got to admit, I am surprised, and I know you're not alone. There's another company, Bad Idea, that's also doing this. But how is it going for you guys so far?
It's going fine. I mean, what we're going to do is we're going to offer the trades in digital. It's not that, honestly, I think there's a wonderful collecting experience about from the periodicals.
Sure.
So quite honestly, what I'm doing is I'm looking to put the trades out. I think that's a better reading experience as a digital read. It's a full story, beginning, middle, and end. You get much more sense of value from it. I have a hard time justifying a digital price for being the same price as a comic book. I just don't. And we didn't want to devalue the comics at the same time. So there's a better way to manage that. And I think doing digital collections is the right way to go.
Okay. I can appreciate all that. Yeah, all right. Yeah, Nerdette is commenting further, and she says, "I dislike no digital. I can't read them for weeks, but I understand it." Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And a couple weeks ago at C2E2, I had the pleasure of talking to our mutual friend, the horror host Svengoolie, and
Yes.
you made the big announcement last fall in New York
Right.
that part of the Frank Miller Presents was going to be a Svengoolie anthology, and I
Yeah.
know there's been movement since then, and Rich and I talked about it. But you give us an update yourself.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's not even an anthology. It's actually a Svengoolie story featuring the origins of some of his characters. We tell the origins of Tombstone and Kerwin and Body Sorrel. If you're a fan of the show, I can't help but laugh when I tell it because I think it's hysterical. Frank looks at me. He shakes his head, but he gets what I'm doing. He knows the passion behind it. I got a great group of people working on it. I've got Art and Franco. I got Jill Thompson. Chris Jones, all these guys are wonderful storytellers in their own right, all fans of the show. So it was great to bring this team together. Plus, Rich and his team, the whole Svengoolie team of writers, are on the show, on the book too. So they're actually helping us tell the story, and we want to make sure it captures the real spirit of the series.
100%, man. No, you're keeping the flavor, and I can appreciate that. Well, I saw Sven and I saw his producer Jim, and both are very excited for it. And Frank is, or rather, Rich is really one of us, Svengoolie.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Huge comic fan. They're all huge comic fans. They're having a blast, and I think that's what matters the most. The fun part about Frank Miller Presents is the fun part, meaning kind of doing what we want to do, working on books we want to make. We're not looking to compete. We're not looking to be this major publisher. We're not looking to have this giant, shelf presence. We're just looking to do the books that get us excited, and we have enough time to make sure we keep the quality as high as it can be. And that's something that's important to Frank. It's important to myself. It's important to Selene, who's also our partner on the projects. And because of that, you really take a lot of pride in what you're doing, and when it comes out, you feel really good about it. So it's a lot of fun.
No, that's great, man. And truly, you've proven yourself time and time again with the various DC comics that you wrote over the years. Long run on Superboy, obviously.
Yeah.
Great stuff on Metal Men. Great stuff on The Phantom Stranger, among others, and everything. You're working the Kirby Fourth World and everything.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun playing in the corners of the DC universe. That's what I always used to enjoy the most. I would have loved to stay on Phantom Stranger longer, but as it came with everything, every one of those books I did, unfortunately, the day job, the publisher, got in the way. So needless to say, it always cut my time down, but I always enjoyed those moments. I got a chance to see Keith Giffen. I was over at GalaxyCon in Richmond, and Keith stopped by, and we haven't seen each other for a while. It was fabulous to catch up. And it made me miss collaborating with him, to be honest with you. One of the real great people, one of the great, fun, exciting people to work with, and just a joy. And every time we did a book, it was a crazy adventure that you just so happy to see the end product on. So, it's great stuff.
It's funny. I literally just released this week the first interview I ever did with Ross Ritchie at Boom. Yeah. And this is back when he and Mark DeMatteis and everything were doing Herod Square over there. And God, Keith had so many books in the early days of Boom, and it was really great to see him create new stuff and everything. And no, he's always been a longtime favorite. So
yeah. If you talk to Ross, I think he would credit Keith with so much of it, just putting the fire on the Boom and getting that thing going. So which is good.
Already I'm getting questions for you, Dan.
Okay.
Ahmed says DC's early run in the 2000s is my jam. The characters grew and developed from stagnation, and once they started becoming shadows of their golden era, the New 52 happened to capture a new generation of readership.
Yeah.
He says, "Thank you, Dan, for your tenure and all the best." Dan, I always tell you, man. I mean, when I really first became aware of you was when you were at panels at cons and cheerleading and doing the DC Nation and everything. And I really think you managed to create a sense of community.
That's what, for me, that's what comics were about, and I've been going to conventions since I was 10 years old, which means I'm doing it for over 50 years. And I always love going to it and hear people talk and just making that contact with people that have that had an effect on you from the work that they did. And it's a great experience. And also, it's a great feedback. I find the convention people always had some of the strongest feedback for me. I always say they made that extra effort to come see you. You've got to take the time to talk to them too. But, I grew up on the, the bullpen bulletins, Jeanette Kahn's publishorial, Meanwhile,
yeah.
I loved all that stuff. There's anything that gave me a sense of behind the scenes of the comic place to make me feel like I was part of something, always made me feel good. And since we weren't doing fanzines anymore, the goal is to connect as much as you could at the conventions. And what was great is that the fans really reacted. We were pretty much crazy and out of control at those shows. I'm not sure we could do half the stuff we do anymore from those conventions, but boy, did we have a blast.
Well, I appreciated that you guys would always post the DC Nation panels, and then I know they got a little dicey, and all of a sudden they weren't posted anymore. And I'm like, gee, I wonder why. And I mean, because truly, you're right, man. They got very rollicking, and people weren't afraid to speak their mind and say, "This is what I don't like." But also tons of fun. I know I think that's where you discovered Art and Franco's famous quote, "I like pink very much, Lois." And I know that you're like, please don't say that. Please.
Yeah, the stuff that we used to pull was a blast at the panels. We tell these stories all the time, but we joke about it. But the biggest compliment I ever got from a convention panel was a fan came up to me super excited. He goes, "That is the most fun I've ever had a panel." He goes, "I learned absolutely nothing about the company, but I had the most fun I've ever done." And I said, "That's good. That's probably a better impression than people reading from a cue card of something that they've already saw in a solicitation." So. You want to come away with a good story. I tell the story from Dan Jurgens, and this is always sticks with me. I went to a convention in the 80s when they launched Booster Gold, and I was in the room. I gave Dan Jurgens hell over Booster Gold because I thought it was the stupidest origin.
Hilarious.
And all this stuff going on. And I went to it, and he was so gracious and so nice on the stage, and then, 20 years later, here I am meeting him and talking to him, and I retell the story. And Dan looks at me blank, and he goes, "I don't remember any of this." And I say, "You're not supposed to. I'm supposed to remember it. It's my story. This is my convention story." And what I want to do is create convention stories for other people. So when they come out, they said, "I had a great convention because this moment happened when we were connecting in there." So that's the way I see it.
What's the early buzz on the Frank Miller books so far?
It's a little quiet. I'm going to say we got to get out there. You got to remember we're putting out 2 books a month. They're bi-monthly. We're waiting. Frank and I are waiting for the trades. What we are really happy with is the critical response. The people are enjoying the books. Everybody's reading it and loving it. We're getting good feedback on the individual titles, so we feel good about the product. Now it's just about growing. I keep on forgetting we're only theoretically a 6-month-old company for the most part. If you look at it, for all the lead and all the time you spent, we've only been on shelves for 6 months. You got to give yourself some time to grow and get. I mean, we're making little mistakes on the way and still figuring it out. My goal is to work out all the kinks right now, get ourselves on track, to get ourselves on a good schedule, and then when we're ready for our second wave of books, which will be built around the Western Sin City title, then I feel we're going to have our act together and ready to take on the industry in a big way. But right now, it's both of us working making sure the creative is strong and then still figuring out the other bits and pieces along the way.
Do you have that debut month ready for Western Sin City?
Well, we had a little bit of a slow start because because we had a drag on the Ronin release. We're trying to be bi-monthly. We're actually closer to once every 3 months, which is not where we want to be. I'm going to say I'll break the news here for the first time. Frank's actually stepping in and is handling the art on issue 4. And so that way we're giving Philip a chance to jump ahead onto 5 and get that working. So issue 3 will come out, then 4 will come out 2 months later. Penciled inks by Frank Miller, Brits by Frank Miller, and then there'll be tones added by Daniel Enriquez, the same type of work he's doing on the covers. And then Philip will come back for issues 5 and 6. So I'm hoping that gets us on track. And then once that's on track, then all the focus is, as I said, the Eye of Sauron moves on to Sin City to give it the complete focus.
I get it, man. No, that's great. Stephen Commander, a couple comments. and he goes, "Congrats on Frank Miller Presents."
Yeah.
And you see yourself working for Marvel sometime in the future, whether as a creator or editorial. And then he's got a second question coming.
Okay, it's a fun question. I don't know. You know what? Right now, I'm kind of enjoying what I'm doing. I don't think I could ever work as hard as I did in my days of DC ever again. And be honest with you, there's a lot of personal enjoyment that I've got out of working on Ancient Enemies, doing the Hide or Seek book, doing these stories that I feel that I really wanted to tell on my own, and getting a chance to do so. So that's the good part. With Frank Miller Presents, I have a couple of series in the second wave that I'm excited about, and that's probably where my focus is. It's not, I've spoke to a couple of independent companies about other characters, and it's really about what really excites you most, more so than anything else. But I would, you never discount anything. I see CB at different events, but I'm really just more just to say hi than it is anything else. Because I'm not actually actively looking for anything to do. I got enough on my plate right now.
Fair enough, absolutely. And Dan, I want to know too. And sorry, I'm just reaching for my mouse. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I was always reaching for my mouse. First of all, I'll ask Hide or Seek. Is this the start of a new series? Is that how you're looking at this?
Well, the publisher is Bermuda Press, and they release through Simon and Schuster. I have a 2-book deal with Bermuda Press. And the question is whether or not we do a sequel or another. I have another concept that I actually really get excited about, but I do have a second story in mind for Hide or Seek. Really is demand. Part of me, the old publisher in me, still kicks in. If the demand's there, you create for that demand. If the demand's not there, you move on to the next thing. The good part is I have both of them planned, so I really want to see the reaction and the excitement, the feedback from the book. If it's there, we'll do more. If not, I got another thing that I'm pretty excited about too.
Good to hear. And people, not only can you jump on the hardcover version of Hide or Seek, or I don't know if it's a soft cover trade.
Not yet. Oh. We went out with hardcover first.
Okay, very good. And also, this is a digital book. So this is a digital book. Kindle if you want as well.
Yeah.
And so people can, if you want to get a taste of what Dan is doing, as far as prose and stuff, no, it's readily available. And the other question I was going to ask is, you said about working or talking to other publishers and maybe some of the characters that they have at these other publishers. Did your coffee table book, and I'll keep it oblique if it hasn't come out yet. Is it out now, or is it?
That came out at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
That was a lot of fun too. That was another one of those weird little things that came together. I worked with the folks at Condé Nast to tell the story of Street and Smith, their origins and the pulps. And again, I'm trying to do things that I didn't do before, or did something similar, but not completely of this. So getting a chance to be involved in a book like that, getting a chance to do a prose novel, that's a lot more. It's interesting because you're still challenging yourself. I feel like you're repeating yourself. And if I'm going to be out there working or trying to do things, it's got to feel like it's got to be something new or something where I haven't already flexed those muscles, so to speak.
So, and it's funny because mentioning the Street and Smith characters, just like you, man, I love those pulp heroes so much. And would you have interest in making?
Oh, I love those too. I'm interested, always interested in those, because I think they capture a certain period of time, and you really want to do that. I mean, it was intriguing to me because as I was doing that, as we're exploring the history of Street and Smith, they were actually doing novel relaunches with James Patterson on The Shadow and Doc Savage,
of course,
which were brand new interpretations for the most part. But for me, I think the characters work best in the environments they were created for. They're very much period pieces. So, if I was ever to do anything like those, I would make sure I'd be back in the sensibilities where they were originally created. I think that's where it makes sense. I mean, we tried to do that over DC. I brought in Doc Savage and the Avenger.
First wave
for the first wave series that we did.
Yeah,
and that scratched a little bit of that itch. I never got to work on the Shadow, but I guess working on this book made up for some of that. So we got to just do a little bit with the Shadow.
And honestly, I've had this conversation with Matt Wagner, and he agrees with you that a lot of times he feels like these IPs work best if you keep them in which the era in which they were created.
Yeah, it's not and it's not a stretch of the imagination for anybody. It's not this leap or confusing. It just works, and as long as you're consistent in the behavior and consistent with the time period, then I think that's even stronger.
I agree. Oh, Mark Leferrier says First Wave was great. I completely agree. I remember when, you might have been at that convention, but when Azzarello in Chicago introduced the book, and someone asked him, "Who's this book for?" He's like, "Nobody. Nobody younger than me is going to read this book."
Yeah,
and I'm like, "I'm going to read this book."
no better pitchman out there.
You know,
but you know what? I'll always disagree with that. I'm gonna
Yeah.
I'm always gonna lean on the quality of the story and the quality of the storytelling. Everybody's constantly putting up, a knife in a genre, saying it's over or done. And the answer always comes back. Once it comes back, it's going to come back when it comes back, when it's done right. When Frank looks at Sin City, he's not going back to do film noir. He's coming to do a Western. So that's going to be a whole nother ball game. But
that's great to hear.
How many times do we hear Westerns were dead, and yet they have these weird resurgence every once in a while? So it's just quality. You got to live by quality.
I remember 10 years ago, 2013, when the talk was, well, the superhero and comic book movie market is oversaturated. And that's when the Wolverine was out, and Scott Pilgrim, and one of the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies.
Yeah.
And it's like, I always say, and in fact, with the transition from the people that were running the movie side and TV side of DC to now James Gunn, I'm like, every bad movie or TV show is, if they want to rush it back, is only 2 years away from correcting the mistake, because that's how long it takes to shoot and all the post-production to put out a new movie. And man, one good new story erases all the mistakes of the past, I believe.
Yeah, and that's what you look at. I mean, realistically, superheroes have replaced the Western, same type of genre right now. And I mean, it just doesn't mean the other ones are gone. It just means that's what the flavor is at the moment, where all the energy is being put. But it's intriguing to watch all this take place. And we'll see. Like I said, people get very excited about predicting the death of anything. And the best part about being a creator is proving them wrong. So that's our goal, is to prove. How many times have we heard the death of comics? And yet we have this weird resurgence taking place right now in all the crazy corners of the comic industry, which is kind of fun.
100%, man. Let's see here. Mark also says, love Dan. What a legacy to comics, still going on. Even loved Reboot as a kid. Looking forward to these new comics in his prose book. Very nice. And Steven said, Dan really got me to appreciate that era that took place after the Justice Society retired and before Superman made his public debut. I so agree. Go ahead. Yeah, talk about that.
Oh, yeah, no. I mean, it's interesting because, we're always exploring all that stuff. The good part is I was a big comic book reader before working in comics. So, I had a good understanding of that. I mean, I was probably out of comics at the end of the 90s, probably before I joined the company. But I had a good working sense of what was going out there. And look, we did a lot of things to the characters over the years, but the reality is we all appreciated the rich history of the characters. It was our jobs to constantly push it forward. That's the hardest part about it. And without just regurgitating the past, because the truth be told is the audience was growing older with us. It wasn't that they were moving out and a new audience was coming in, so you just couldn't repeat the same gags over again. You had to show some level of progression. And that's ultimately what our goal was. And that's why you have all these interesting spots of time within the DC history that you really mine for stories that you felt weren't told, because that was a way to connect with your past without repeating it.
I totally understand. And I too am a fan of that 50s era of DC, where a lot of the backups were like Roy Raymond, TV Detective.
I love all that stuff. I love all that stuff.
And all that. Yeah. So no, I'm with you, man. And I really think there are modern, story potential. God, what Tom and Phil Hester are doing, they just wrapped it up. Gotham City Year One.
Yeah,
great Slam Bradley story. I love Slam Bradley. And just that idea of, well, who was minding the store between that Justice Society and Justice League era? Who were the heroes?
Yeah, I mean, look, one of my favorite stories to tell at DC is the story of New Frontier. Okay, and the story of New Frontier is what happened was Darwin Cook was working on New Frontier with the editor Mark Chiarello. The book was put on hold because the continuity of New Frontier didn't match the continuity of DC at the current time. So they literally had the book in the drawer. They weren't planning to publish it. And then what I did when I first got there, I went through, excuse the expression, but I went through everybody's drawers, so to speak. Not allowed to do that anymore. But I went through everybody's drawers, and in that found a lot of books that people had commissioned and didn't publish, and we were making decisions about what to keep and what to get rid of. So I came across New Frontier with Mark Chiarello. He told me the story, and I'm like, when this is a book, nobody's going to care where it fits into continuity. This is beautiful and brilliant. So they actually finished New Frontier and did that entire story. And for me, that was essential because it really was a way to mine an area, mine a territory, tell a story, even if it didn't fit with everything else, still was the perfect thing to stand on alone and sit on a bookshelf, as we could see now, or become an animated movie or anything else we want to see. But it's funny, you talk about Slam Bradley. I guess that's what brought back Darwin Cook. Darwin Cook loved Slam Bradley, and he used to bring that up all the time.
Doesn't surprise me, man. No, I remember when the issues of New Frontier were coming out, and they were like 64-page floppies, and I brought one up for Darwin to sign and stuff, and I'm like, this is going to be so amazing when it's collected and stuff. And he was a little bummed that I think he wanted to keep the price point of the individual issues down. At least that's how he explained it to me.
Yeah.
And he's like, this was the compromise. I'm not crazy that it's a floppy, but at least it's coming out, and he was very proud of it, and got to know Darwin a little bit over the years before. Sweetheart of a guy, yeah, tough guy, definitely a tough guy, and that's great.
Yeah, he's a bit of a tough guy, pussycat, so to speak.
Yeah, well, he cares.
We had a very fun relationship. That's the only way I can describe it today. I have fun relationship with a lot of people.
Wesley wants to know regarding Frank Miller Presents, can we look to you guys for the back catalog? My collection can't be complete until there's a hardcover for Life and Times of Martha Washington. Excited for all the new stuff as well.
Yeah, the good part is, Frank had a wonderful existing relationship with Dark Horse. They just put everything back in press, and I think they just put 300 back in press. We're brand new right now. We're just a couple of guys. This is really a 3-4 person shop. That's all it is. We're doing all the works. I'm doing the barcodes, the solicitations. We're doing it all. That's why they're always wrong, I guess. I don't know. I used to have a staff for this, but until we feel we got our feet on the ground, until we feel that have a long-term business strategy. We really just want to focus on creating new material, and the back catalog will be what we're creating now, more so than bringing back other Frank's projects. But Frank, Frank would love to see all this stuff under one umbrella someday. But the good part is, it's in good hands right now.
Fair enough. Now, and obviously that was a co-creation of him and Dave Gibbons too.
Exactly. So, and a lot of Frank's stuff is you figure he's got Hard Boiled with Jeff Darrow.
Yes.
Same thing with Rusty the Boy Robot. A lot of Frank's an extraordinarily generous collaborator. The books that we're doing are the only books that we're doing. Frank Miller Presents are the ones that are coming off of things that he solely did creation on, Sin City, and Ronin.
Oh, okay. And so, was Pandora an idea of yours?
No, that was Frank's idea. That's how it started. Frank had an idea, and this is how give a snapshot of how Frank wants to work. Likes to create the concept, the idea, and then bring other people in to help execute it. Then work with them on the execution of the idea. It's a lot of what it's talking about. Is a lot about mentorship and helping people grow and expand their own skill sets. And he works them hard. He sits down with Emma. Emma comes up maybe once a month. They sit down and talk about designs, and they talk about characters. But there's a real collaboration going on there, which I think just helps elevate the entire product. But that's part of what it's more about. It's not about just getting your soul vision on the table, but also starting a concept, working with others, helping them improve their craft, and in the process, improve the project you're working on.
Very cool. I've always appreciated Frank's point of view. How's he doing? Years ago, and I know since I think our initial fright of seeing him, he didn't look too well a couple of years ago, about 10 years ago or so. And really since maybe Dark Knight 3, or I know when when Bendis was coming to DC. I know he and Frank did a couple panels in New York and things like that. And I would get reports from Brian and Tom King, and it's like, no, Frank's doing a lot better and stuff. And yeah, so how's he doing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's out there. I mean, what's great about it, he's been for pushing Frank Miller Presents. He's been out there with me pushing, and we've done a couple of store appearances. He's doing convention appearances. So there's a lot of extra work to start a line, and he's been right in the middle of it all, helping pushing it forward and getting out there and meeting the fans. And it's been a really fabulous experience. We've had a great time at the store signings that we've done with him. We've done about 3 so far. He has a couple more planned, possibly during the course of the year. He's been doing conventions as well. And I think that's important because the company bears his name. So he's got to be out there right up front, speaking on behalf of it. And he understands that and is more than excited by the task.
Are you guys coming to Chicago anytime soon?
You know what? We talked about it. We missed the window. No plans at this moment. I don't know what his convention schedule is. I'm on a slightly different one. We decided to divide and conquer. So that's one way to go. I might be up in Chicago around the release of the Svengoolie book, but I'm still waiting to see the timing on this right now. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. And obviously, the guys are going to probably want you for a store signing in Skokie. So
yeah, I'm hoping so. I'm hoping there's going to be doing some stuff like that. This might be the one place where I make my exemption and do store exclusives with Svengoolie. Thinking about that as well. Testing that water as we speak. Only because it's such a unique project. It's not ongoing. It's 2 specials, one in June, one in October. So I want to have some fun with it while we can and make the most out of it.
Outstanding. That sounds great, man. Stephen wanted to also know if you were to do something in Marvel, do you have characters that you would want to write?
The only Marvel characters that I would really want to work on. I love the monster characters. That's just me.
Yeah.
Werewolf by Night, Doom and Dracula, Ghost Rider. I would have a blast with that stuff.
I can see that. That's fantastic, man. No, those are the fun books. You know, and again, Dan, you and I are close enough in age. Like when you'd get those Whitman or whatever, 3 comics bagged together, and always the middle book was like Damien, son of Hell, or Hellstorm, or it was Where Monsters Dwell.
Yeah, Monsters Dwell was one of my first Marvel comics besides Spider-Man. Sure. I always wanted more issues of Legion of Monsters.
I don't blame you, man. I don't blame you. Have you paid attention to the James Gunn announcements? Do you have thought, or
it's interesting. I'm watching it. I'm watching everything peripherally. I think it's intriguing because his sensibilities don't naturally translate to the expectations of what you would see from a DC project, which is probably a good thing. And as I say to everybody, instead of worrying about everything lining up brilliantly between TV and comics and all this, let everything play to its own medium, play to its own strength, find its own voice for the market, for the type of story you're telling in the medium you're telling it in. Shouldn't be one size fits all. I think it's a mistake on everybody's part. It might work in certain cases, but it's more the exception than the rule.
Are you guys shopping around? You said that when Frank comes back to film, it's going to be a Western. And obviously,
back to Sin City Comics. He's going to the Western's that. We haven't shopped anything right now. We're just making comic books right now.
That's cool.
As it's part of that digital thing too. We just want to make comics the way we remember comics. When we did the Ash Can, the gag was to do it on newsprint so that when people held it, it felt like an old comic, smelled like an old comic, and we wanted that visceral reaction to say, this is what we're doing. We're doing comics we remember. Not written like it's a comic from the 60s or 70s, but what your expectation when you pick up a comic, what you want to see and get.
When you guys were doing Gotham Central back at DC, it was on Newsrag.
Yeah,
and it felt pulpier. Was that by design to make?
No, that was by budget.
and I understand that. No, that's fair answer. But honestly, I appreciated it in terms of, and I can understand the artists that are like, the colors run together and it's harder to really separate. And I mean, at least that was the look of things. And I know, poor, Gene. Well, when Gene Colan would do stuff on Baxter paper wouldn't look quite as good.
Yeah.
Depending on who was coloring it and stuff, it wouldn't look quite as good. And maybe
Oh.
that was in the early days of Baxter paper. But
yeah. Like we don't want to talk about Flexograph because that was the coloring thing that destroyed certain.
Wow. Was that the stuff in Centralia? Was that?
There's Flexograph what they put on the Who's and the Crisis, and it just turned into mud. But Jim Lee is the one who pushed DC Comics to glossy paper with Batman 608. That was the entry point on the main line, moving it up to glossy based on the quality of the material and the potential of the series. And then we saw, as it started to improve, we really wanted to get more people excited about what's happening, and then we brought the glossy paper in, and we're off to the races.
Was that for Hush? Was 608 the start of Hush?
The start of Hush, yes.
Okay, very cool. Magic K joining us. What are your thoughts of the Blue Beetle movie? Did Jeff Johns, one of the creators of Jaime Reyes, or is he
Jaime Reyes is an interesting thing. I just actually posted something on Facebook about Jaime Reyes the other day, just so that it was clear about that. Because I'm going to say something. A lot of the institutional knowledge from DC is not inside DC anymore. It's all outside of DC. So, it's our job to constantly remind people of how things happen in some weird ways. But Jaime was actually created, started in the discussion once we knew we were going to kill Ted Kord as part of Countdown to an Infinite Crisis. And basically we had an idea in place, but really it was Keith Giffen at the heart and soul of building Jaime. I mean, I brought Keith outline of what we want him to be. We want him Hispanic. We want him to be young. We wanted to work the Scarab in, and Keith took the story and ran with it. He actually changed what I had in mind. I thought it was going to be much more of a mystic story, and he made it into a science fiction story. And then ultimately we were out there scouring the grounds for designs, and we had some designs that just didn't come together. Then Cully Hamnes's design came in and knocked it out of the park. Cully just blew it out of the water. And Cully, in his design, had some ideas in the design itself, and that was incorporated into it because then Keith brought John Rogers in, and then all of them came together and brought the character to life. But Keith's the guy who named him, put him in El Paso. Did a lot of stuff there, which was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Let me ask you about the first Blue Beetle, Dan Garrett.
Yes.
And an interesting little leapfrog of a publishing past, and was at Charlton for a while. And I forget where, you'll remember the first company that published Blue Beetle before Charlton.
Yes.
I don't. Yeah. All right. Shame on us. We don't remember.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
But my more important question is,
we're old, but we're not that old. How about that?
All good, man. Too many facts in the brain, man, for both of us. No, believe me, I understand. But I wondered, as far as when he would show up again in DC, and obviously the Scarab is a big part of Jaime's origin and everything. But were there rights issues why we didn't get more Dan Garrett stories, or was it much in the same way of too many Robins?
When Len Wein was doing, they brought Blue Beetle in. You got to remember the Charlton characters came over for Dick Giordano. He had worked at Charlton. He wanted those characters over there, so they were brought there as a favor to him.
Sure.
Blue Beetle was his version, so that's why he promoted that one the hardest. The one with Ted Kord.
Right.
The Dan Garrett one, though, did come into the story when Len Wein was writing it back in the 80s. So we had it, but at that point, when I come in, we know we're about to move away from Ted Kord. So I didn't want to go any further backwards, and I didn't want to go backwards. I want to go forward. The goal was to get younger, to bring a little more diversity to the DC universe, and that was one of the reasons we came together with Jaime. And then also we wanted to have a character with a different look, different sensibility. We used to talk about silhouette all the time, about how the characters looked in silhouette. And what was great about Cully's design was there was a silhouette that was instantly recognizable to Blue Beetle. And that's what was great about it. And that way you didn't need to see the character, you just need to see the silhouette and he was in the room, and that was important for me because that's ways characters start to really develop their own sensibility and identity when you're really able to point them out very quickly and recognize who he is.
Understood. I'm just such a sucker for all the Golden Age characters, just like the pulp heroes, and wondered, maybe during your run, if we'd ever see a Dan Garrett running around with the Justice Society or anything like that. Or
yeah, I mean, I was the guy going forward, not backwards. That was my thing. I mean, even when you look at Jeff Johns JSA, that's an all new team. That's not an old team. That's they basically slowly replaced every single character. By the time you're at the later end of that run, that's all new characters. There's not very few older characters exist. Once you get past Alan Scott and Jay Garrick, the need for some of them didn't seem as strong. There was, because Green Lantern and Flash had that real legacy approach more so than anybody else. But we didn't have interest. There wasn't any huge desire for Dan Garrick, that's for sure.
Fair enough. No, that's cool. Ooh, Paul has a good question, man. Will we ever see a Dan Didio biography? You have such a wealth of experience and con stories. It would be great to have this on the show. Paul, this is why I have Dan on as often as I do, is to reminisce and get these behind the scenes stories as much as talking about the new stuff and everything. So,
yeah, it's funny because if it was about the soap opera days, yeah, sure. No, but in the comic book days, probably, I had people ask me that, believe it or not. And I don't know. I break out into a sweat. I was telling you, John, beforehand, I said, what I used to do, and this is what I have. I used to, at the start of every year or around the start of every year, when you're trying to lay out what the game plan was for the DC universe, what I used to do is I used to talk to the talent, talk to the editors, aggregate all the ideas and concepts, then craft a major storyline arc that took all those ideas and pushed them all forward. Goal was to elevate all the stories, give a more cohesive universe, but also help the smaller books find places where they can tie into to bring audience to them. So that was the game plan. I used to do that every year, and Paul would get it. Yes, no, this, that, and we would work it all out, and we'd push it forward. Then when I had a final document, I gave it out to the staff, and that was our guideline. And I would say somewhere in the beginning, we used to run about 70 to 80% to what the original document was. And I still have all those documents.
You posted one.
I have all that stuff, and it's funny because I was looking for something, and I come across it, and that's how I found a lot of this Blue Beetle stuff. But I come across it, and it reminds me what we were going to do, what we didn't do, what the plan was. And it's interesting when you hear people say, "Oh, that didn't work," or "That wasn't, that didn't hit the way I thought it would." And the real answer is, now that I'm not there, it's like, yeah, that wasn't the original plan. That's why.
Fair enough. Absolutely.
And we had to make an adjustment, and we had to flip something, and we had to switch it around. We had to change things. That's just the way it works. And we hope we did it right, but you're doing it on the go. The best part about comics, just like working in TV, is if this one isn't good, you try to get them the next time, and you're always constantly putting it out. That's why when people come to you, go, "Oh, what do you really love?" I said, I don't know what I really love, because you don't really get a chance to celebrate. Because you got to put a book out the next month. So it works. You're already moved on. But now you can enjoy it a little bit. Now I can enjoy it a little bit more looking back.
And truly, Dan, as far as a biography or an autobiography, maybe after a few more years, a little more perspective. And also, hey, you're writing chapters of your life right now with Hide or Seek, the YA book, and what you're doing with Frank Miller Presents. I've got the document up that you shared on Facebook the other day.
Yeah.
And I blew it up a little bit. For the audio audience, I'm going to go over some of these ideas that you were pitching to Paul Levitz.
Yeah, so, I'm going to say one thing. That was the plan with Nightwing dying. And as I like to say, the amount of crap I caught for not doing something. You think about it. All these people are upset at me for not killing him. It's almost like that means they wanted me to kill him, which I get confused about.
This is true, Dan. I was ringside for a lot of that grief you took.
Yeah, and I'm like, you were upset because we didn't do something? So next time we do it, make it worth our while.
We were all glad that Dick Grayson was spared. Certainly post that decision and Infinite Crisis, the love for Dick Grayson only grows.
The Dick Grayson thing was always interesting to me, because there was this love for Dick Grayson, which I didn't understand. And now I do, which is better. Which is growth. I think it's called growth. But the reality was, at the time I got to DC, the character was a little stagnant. Tim Drake was overwhelming him. He was aging up to the point that he was almost the same age as Batman. He was in this no man's land. The entire Teen Titans team that became the Titans, they sort of just getting squeezed out of existence. Not quite the Justice League, not really Teen Titans. So they were sort of lost in the middle.
Yes.
and you needed that big death. Like I said, I wanted the big death. Like Supergirl was a big death, and Barry Allen Flash was a big death. And what better than Nightwing, a person who was basically been completely replaced at that point, at least in some of the storytelling. And everybody, there was a catalyst for a bunch of things, and that document is the catalyst to show you what else was going to change by the death of Greg Grayson. You don't kill a character and then just make it happen and forget about it. It's got to have long-term applications and long-term story potential. That's the only time you really should consider doing something of that nature. And at that point, it was early at my time there, and it would have been only my second major death following Ted Kord. I think it would have been impactful. I still think it would have been a good story.
Oh my God, it would have been absolutely. And he's the original sidekick going back for 1940 and everything. My God, for all the publishing companies, I love Jeff's Stargirl story that he's doing right now with all the Golden Age sidekicks. I think that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean listen, probably the two best writers of DC Comics, for me at least, are probably Jeff Johns and Mark Waid. I think they understand the universe the best. There's so many great writers that have worked there, but for understanding the intricacies and what makes these characters special, those are the guys. But I worked with Jeff for so many years, and nobody understood those characters as well as he did. They just didn't. It's clear, and so he knows how to really contextualize a lot of these things and really be able to create those worlds. Like I said, the fun part about him, he constantly creates things that feels like characters I've known, but they're brand new.
I was saying this earlier today. I don't know if he was pulling my leg and he created a lot of these Golden Age sidekicks for the Stargirl book, but he was like, "Oh, John, come on, you know your Golden Age. How dare you not remember Cherry Bomb, the human bomb?" And I'm like, back in my head, I'm like, I don't think she existed. No, but they did those. Am I right? Did they not exist? I mean, did he create it for the story?
The one other person who did that so brilliantly was Grant with All-Star Superman. He created a world of Superman. Every single character was brand new for the most part. And boy, oh boy, you would never have known that. You would never have known that because of how well it was written and how much it captured the tone and style of the era that they were supposedly emulating. So, I mean, that's just quality writing. It's a skill that people have. Some people have.
No, some people have. You're absolutely right because truly, Dan, I'm not going to drag you through the mud with me on my frustrations with Star Wars and Star Trek as far as some of the new writers and the writing choices.
So, I watch the old stuff again.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, no, that'll save you headaches, no question. For the audio audience, I kind of want to go through the laundry list here of what you got on Facebook. So for the Atom, the power transfers from his costume to his body. Firestorm returns from a 1-year absence in space to find his personal life shattered and his father in jail for murder. Green Lantern Corps, now fully up and running in its new structure, the Guardians are revealed to be omnipotent beings. Their blue farms are just a shell. Supergirl leaving Paradise Island to discover the world on her own. Superboy, shaken up by a meeting by a darker and deadlier version of himself, he decides his fate is sealed and moves in with Luthor as his son. We're kind of, I loved what they're doing on the Titans TV series. Nightwing, Jason Todd picking up the mantle of Nightwing following the death of Dick Grayson and is rejected by the Bat Group as a villain and an imposter. He sets out to prove he can be a better Batman by doing it his own way. Tim Drake in Robin sets himself on the path to become Bruce's successor by retracing his steps in training. Cassandra Cain sacrifices herself to bring in Stephanie Brown, and she becomes the new Batgirl coming out of a coma. Gotham Central centering more around Commissioner Gordon or Harvey Bullock. And very interesting, your comment, if not, we might be canceling the book in 2006, which I think is interesting. So Birds of Prey, the Lady Shiva teams with Barbara Gordon. Checkmate, Barbara Gordon becomes the head of Checkmate. The Titans, as you said, Bart, Starfire, and Cyborg leave the team. Ravager and Terra maybe join. Putting Starfire in the Outsiders. Some of those concepts. Any thoughts on those slug lines in terms of what happened?
I remember a bunch of I remember where a bunch of that was. I thought the idea, because the interesting thing was Jason Todd coming back was the one that caught us off guard. We did not expect him to be that successful coming back. And when he did come back, we wanted to use them more. So that was a way to use them without just being another Batman, another Robin, another one of these same things. So that was a problem for me. I'm sorry, but the sun's in my eyes over here.
Oh, that's okay, man. Yeah, I don't want you to blind yourself. That's
okay. I'm just like, I got the setting sun coming into my room here, so it's like, oh boy, it's throwing all my lighting off. So apologize.
Not at all.
But anyway, so that was that one there. Remember, Supergirl, we had just brought back Kara Zor-El, so that was a big deal for us to get a story for her. And I really liked the Superboy idea. That was something Jeff was pushing forward with Lex Luthor, and I thought it was everything was about putting them in a new context, a new thing, and coming into the story in the middle of the new status quo and not knowing how they got there. And then we were going to slowly reveal that story. That story was going to be revealed in the 52 weekly series, but instead the 52 weekly series became its own beast. So a lot of these stories sort of just went on their own. But a lot, as you know, a lot of that changed without the death of Nightwing. A lot of those dominoes didn't fall in that manner.
No, it's like a good what if list.
Yeah.
It's like when you talk to us about 5G and some of your 5G plans and stuff. So no, I love it. Wesley asks and says, I feel under your watch, there were great moves to expand the comic book market, trade, and DVD being one of many of those market moves. If the world hadn't turned upside down, would there have been success, or are we forever a niche hobby, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be really seen. The trades that sell best are the ones that are the inspiration for the media and movies. You know, the story I tell over and over again, but always worth repeating, from the trailer of Watchmen when it runs at the end of Dark Knight to 8 months later when Watchmen movie comes out, we sell 1 million trades of a 20-year-old book.
Wow. Okay.
And I think you're hearing some of that right now with following James Gunn's announcement with Supergirl and the Tom King Supergirl in particular. That's a good thing. I think that's the right way it should work, because ultimately it shows that the comics are the inspiration for the material and not the following. You know, I'm going to say things. I can talk honestly now. I'm not a big fan of books like, Batman 66 and Superman 78 and all these other revisitings, primarily because it's continuities and sensibilities established outside of the comic format, and we just act as licensees for our own properties. We're not the creators. We're following other people's vision. And I understand people love those movies and want to see that stuff, but the truth be told is the comic companies should be the one creating the IP and the direction and the focus more so than the other way around. Once you flip it upside down, then you're at everybody else's whim. And the comics become less essential. They just become another product that's out there rather than the product that's the leader,
mentioning as you did that the great sales of things like Watchmen leading up to the movie and things like that. So do you feel like the ambition of a lot of us fans that, if the TV show or the movie does well, it's going to bring us more comic book readers? Are you saying that? Yeah, I mean,
it brings in casual readers. It doesn't bring comic book readers. My definition of comic book reader is completely different than a casual reader, because there's a commitment that goes on and an investment that goes on a regular basis to the point of distraction. What that does, though, it broadens the understanding and sensibilities. But to really get involved in comics, to really be a comic book reader on a weekly, monthly basis, there's a certain gene people have to have, to really adapt it and understand it and be comfortable with the format and translate it and want to follow it and pull it apart and put it back together and argue about it and call everybody else out for what they believe in and don't believe in. That's what it's all about, man.
No, you're right about that. And actually mentioning your early, you were teasing about it, your early work in soap operas.
Yeah.
But no, you're right, man. It's that same commitment of, these are our stories. Don't take my stories away.
And soap operas is the perfect analog for comics in its own way, because of the ongoing, continuing, never-ending pace of what they're doing, but also on how fans react to them. I used to travel with a lot of the soap stars, and nobody knew the actor's name. They knew the character name. They would scream out the character name to them. Nobody ever called them by their real name, and it's a little disconcerting, but the talent understood that and understood that relationship. And I think we have comic book creators that understand that same relationship with a fan. And it's a very unique relationship for what it is. And you have to embrace it, enjoy it, and make the most of it. That's what I say,
Agreed. And things like Soap Opera Digest are no different than what we're doing right now on Word Balloon,
yeah.
but also all the great comic magazines and fan magazines as
Absolutely.
well. So yeah, I'm with you. Oh, by the way, I'm psyched. I'm going to meet Jeannie Francis
Oh
this
wow.
summer because she and Frakes are going to Mitch Halleck's show Terrificon
Yeah,
this
I
summer.
worked briefly with Jeannie when she was on one of the shows that I was working on. I forgot, it might have been either Loving or All My Children. One of them.
Probably
She did
General
the
Hospital. Probably General
Oh yeah,
Hospital.
no, but she actually came to
Oh.
New York and worked after her General Hospital time. She came to New York for a short period. Had a chance to work
Oh.
with her and met Frakes once then too. Yeah, way back when.
No, I'm excited. I was, hey man, big Luke and Laura fan when I was in high school and college. Come on.
They were still Luke and Laura is the Dark Knight Returns of soap operas.
That is a very apt comparison. That's fantastic. Paul wants to know what your thoughts were on bringing the Watchmen characters into the DCU. I love the idea of Doomsday Clock, was both great in art and story, but just seemed to fizzle out unless things are still to be revealed. And I'll even take it back, Dan, to before Watchmen and when that was coming out.
Yeah.
And that was certainly a hot potato where, I do think some of the miniseries worked. Some maybe not as well as the others, but that was certainly a controversial thing. I just read Dave Gibbons' autobiography, and he kind of retreads. So yeah, from your perspective,
that was an interesting time for all of us, to say the least. Yeah, I mean, for me, honestly, Dr. Manhattan was going to be part of the whole 5G thing. To be perfectly honest with you,
really,
yeah. That was what we're part of the plan was that Dr. Manhattan sort of playing with time a little bit and trying to figure things out. I forgot there was a story machinations. We had some ideas floating around. We never fully realized them. And I think some of that wound up at Doomsday Clock or didn't. I'm not really, to say the truth, I lose track of the timelines, if you want, you know what I mean? So it's kind of intriguing to me at this moment to go back and think that through, because I'm not exactly, I'm forgetting the order. That's why I keep memos, so I can remember the order of things when we talk about them.
No, I hear you, man. Oh, you see, and Paul likes the idea of Dr. Manhattan being, the big bad maybe in 5G. So yeah, he says that would have been great.
That was the idea. It was this constant tinkering, and ultimately the marriage of the line and how it resets was going to be part. He was going to be part of that, if I remember correctly.
Fair enough. Sean is looking forward to seeing you in Arizona.
I'm looking forward to. I've never been to Phoenix. This is I've been singing the song all week. By the time I get to Phoenix, we'll get it there pretty soon, beginning of June. I'm having a blast. The convention trail I picked this year are all cities I've never been in before, so it's really been a lot of fun. Getting a chance to meeting a lot of fans. And getting out and we're actually hand selling the Frank Miller books, because it's clear those books are not as well recognized, or at least lost on the shelf a little bit. So we got to get out there and beat that drum. And going to conventions is the best way to do it, so I'll be there.
I don't blame you, and I think that's a great idea. And also, I'm all for you doing a cover album of Glenn Campbell's songs. All right, Galveston, I still hear you, 3 winds calling, whatever it was. All right. I think I die in Vietnam in this song. All right. Have you ever really analyzed the lyrics to Galveston? It's a soldier on the beach.
Oh, is it really? I didn't even know that.
It's his final thoughts of Galveston and his girl that he left behind.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I know it's such a happy song, or it seems to be this nice wistful song. And it's like, actually, the guy's dying, and these are his dying thoughts.
There's a lot of songs I don't want to know the real meanings of. It make me cry.
Wichita Lineman, I can hear Dan Didio doing that song. Fantastic, man. You're killing me, dude. Well, honestly, I'm really excited for you, and really, especially Hide or Seek. And I love this, man. It's a good new chapter for yourself. As you say, you've got other stories you want to do, other YA stories or more adult.
Yeah, I'm a YA. I'm actually, that's my sweet spot. That's how when I was developing, what do you want to say? When you were developing a lot of your earlier muscles, that was the sensibilities. I really can't write much rougher. It's kind of weird to say that. It's kind of funny to do that, but for me to be able to craft a story and be able to contextualize and develop the characters and explain them who they are, there's a certain sensibility and a certain fun about how I like to write that really just lends itself to that particular genre and that age,
Cool. I'm for it. Absolutely, man. And really excited to see what more you've got coming from Frank Miller Presents as well.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a blast. We got a lot of work ahead of us. But both Frank and I and Celine are very committed to this. And more importantly, we're really happy with the way things have turned out so far. Could be better production-wise, but that comes in time, working out the kinks. But we feel that hopefully with the second year and the second round of books that we're discussing, it'll be pretty exciting to see.
So beyond Phoenix, what are your convention plans this summer?
Oh gosh, I'm in Phoenix. I'm going to do Washington State. Also, I'm looking forward to there. Going to Washington State. Then I will be in going to San Diego. Naturally, want to make the rounds. And then after that, I'll be in Raleigh, Durham.
Nice.
Then be in Austin, and the end of the year in Columbus. So we got a bunch of shows. It's a crazy convention trail, but I think it's hopefully by the end of the year we'll be able to cover a lot of portions of the country and get the word out about the books that we're creating.
That's great, man. Truly, and no, and I don't blame you for hand selling, and obviously maybe hopefully convincing some local comic stores if they haven't already jumped on the bandwagon and to jump on as well.
Listen, the comic stores have been very supportive. Been giving me a lot of good feedback. And we got some ideas on how to be a little bit stronger coming out of the gate. Bi-monthly might have been a lot of fun for us to work on a schedule, larger books, but I think the monthly pattern might be the better thing to develop retailer fans, consistency, and things like that. So, you're not constantly reminding them you're coming out. There's more of a rhythm to what you do. So we're working out a couple of kinks. By the time we come back out, I feel we'll have all the rough spots edged off, and hopefully run a lot smoother.
That's excellent, man. Well, and in the meantime, I'm sure this will be at your booth as well.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
So the brand new YA book, it's the Superpower Protection program, Hide or Seek, and a lot of young people finding themselves in a community that might be more oppressive than
exactly.
And well, you and I are fans of The Old Prisoner, and immediately that came to mind as I read the book.
And you didn't even read the book, and that is exactly my inspiration.
Absolutely, man. No.
Nailed it.
Yeah, and that's great. I think it is a great idea. Oh, hey, thank you, Paul, for reminding me. Any free comic book day issue for Frank? There was
not yet. We, you know what? We didn't have our new product ready. So realistically, we're right in the middle of our first round of books. So the truth is, we're really just focused on getting the first round done. Then we hope to have something out by the end of this year that'll be out there and available to push our material. And you know what? We made our ash can available to retailers. We're probably going to do something similar to that when we push our next round of books out the door.
That's excellent. So when are the next announcements for you guys coming, Dan?
I'm hoping to have the next set of announcements somewhere between July and October.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, hey, man, post San Diego.
Yeah. I was hoping that, we're thinking about San Diego, but San Diego is pretty noisy. So probably after that and before New York,
There you go. Well, yeah. And maybe, as school starts up again and everything, and it's an excuse for me to bug you and come back. For more talk, man. As always, I love these talks that we do, and I'm really happy for you, Dan. You worked really hard, really hard for those 20+ years at DC.
Yeah.
You earned the break and transition to an easier schedule. I hope it is. I know you're wearing a lot of hats at Frank Miller.
But I'm doing what I want to do. That's a lot different, and doing it the way I want to do it was even more fun. So that's the good part, and working with a lot of good people, which is even better. So at the end of the day, it's extraordinarily rewarding. Not to say DC wasn't. A lot of good people there. A lot of great stuff we did. You got caught in the corporate morass to the end, probably a little bit more than I wanted to be. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of stuff you can hold your head up for. So that's good. It's just, but I mean, like now it's time to move on. Now we're on to the next thing, which is kind of fun, and that's the good part about it too. And still be involved in comics, which is even better.
Well, and Dan, I'm saying this just for clarification for the audio or audience. Things have not gotten smoother at Warner's or DC since your exit. So unfortunately, we're still living in interesting times.
Yeah. I still have some friends there. I talked to them a little bit, but everybody's as I like to remind everybody, you're still working in comics. keep it in perspective.
There you go, man. No, and I do know creatively everyone is doing the best they can
Absolutely.
under these circumstances.
Absolutely.
And I'm rooting for Marie. I'm rooting for all the creators.
Yep.
Thankfully, great ideas are coming out during this very tumultuous time. So
Yeah.
what are you going to do? Dan, stick around for a second as I wrap up.
Sure
I'll
will.
ask you something off the air. But everybody, thanks a lot for watching and
Great.
listening.
Thanks for having me, and thanks guys for listening in too. I appreciate it. Thanks for the questions.
Great questions, absolutely. And Stephen Frank is joining me later tonight for a discussion of a Western noir and a Kickstarter campaign that he's got going. So that'll be fun. That'll be at 10 Eastern later tonight. I had to fit everything in today because I was on the road this week. I was at Illinois State, polluting the children's minds and corrupting our next generation of creative people. So what are you going to do? So that's tonight at 10 o'clock. Please join me then for the next Word Balloon Live. Until next time, stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.